Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of Science 122 Designer Babies. I'm going to go over the content introduction with you guys so you kind of know what this class is going to cover as far as science stuff. Um, First of all, this is going to be in the biology class, so that's for freshmen. And I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, so when I was choosing a flavor for genetics and heredity, I thought, why don't we do genetic engineering? Because it used to just be a sci-fi thing where you could possibly change the color of your baby's eyes genetically. But now we're actually at a place where we can do that. And so the questions go from, can we do these things, to should we do these things? And you and your generation is going to have to answer a lot of those questions and vote for people who agree with you and determine things about what is right and wrong when it comes to this new technology that humans have developed. So I think this is going to be, even if it doesn't feel really relevant to you right now, it will definitely be relevant in your lifetime. So that's why I called it designer babies. Should humans be designing their own babies, and what would be the possible consequences of that within human nature? So we are going to look at some sci-fi type stuff because we're going to be examining what it means to be human in some ways, but we're also going to be looking at some technology stuff and the actual science behind how that technology will make us answer the questions about humanity. So let's look at these academic standards. In all of your syllabi, you have a link to what's called the evidence statements for the standard that is chosen. Next generation science standards are the ones that we recently adopted in New Mexico. They're way better than the old ones. The old ones were just kind of like memorizing an insane amount of vocabulary words. And now they want you to memorize and use all of the vocabulary words. No, I'm just kidding. But they actually want you to understand concepts. And I think that's way more important than just memorizing vocabulary words. So here's the first one. Ask questions to clarify relationships about the role of DNA and chromosomes in coding the instructions for characteristic traits passed on from parents to offspring. So if you haven't really studied genetics, you're like, well, I know what DNA is, and I think I know what a chromosome is, but this might not be something that is very familiar to you. So one of the things you can do with these standards is scroll down, and it'll give you a little bit more information about what that means. These things in the middle, you can just kind of ignore them because this is for teachers really way more than students. And so this will just give you a few more vocabulary words and interesting things that we're going to be talking about in the class. So there's an evidence statement for each of these in the links, so you can highlight those and you can check out and see what you think is going to be interesting to cover, what you might have questions about. There was a question on your quiz, or I think in part one of this assignment, where you have to ask some questions about the syllabus, and you can ask some questions about these standards. So what I do is, because these standards are written largely for teachers, I break it down and I make an essential question for each one of them, because that way it's something we can focus on. At the end of each lesson, you're going to be asked to figure out how the lesson connects to one of these essential questions. So it's really important that you know what they are, and the quiz at the end of this little lesson will ask you what the essential questions are for this class. So maybe write them down. So the first one is, how is genetic information coded for in DNA? I know you already know that you have DNA and that you get it from your parents, but we're going to look at how it actually works, and how does something get from being in your DNA to making you have the color eyes you have. When we relate that to our flavor of this class, which is genetic engineering, we would ask, well, if DNA is coded for naturally this way, how do we interrupt that process or change it so that we could decide the eye color for a baby potentially? Here's one that's about how does DNA change over time. So there's a couple of different ways, or three different ways that they really want us to look at, that can change your DNA and make your offspring different than you, or even introduce new traits to the population. So new genetic combinations through meiosis. So basically, when you get a sperm and an egg together, it depends on which sperm and which egg you get together, and that's why and even if you have 20 siblings, you all look different, because every sperm and every egg is different because of this process called meiosis. You can also have errors happen. Really, these errors are called mutations. So I don't know why they separate 2 and 3, but I didn't write the standard. I just have to use it. But it basically means mutations. And mutations can be good or bad, and a lot of times they don't do anything, but they do change your DNA. Then we're going to look at how do we figure out how likely it is for offspring to have a certain trait. So we can actually look at what traits do the parents have, and then we can make a really good guess about what traits the children will have, the offspring will have. So those are the 3 big topics we're going to cover in this class, and all of our lessons will answer at least one of these questions. I hope you guys have a good day.